Islam is one message that is understood through the scholars of Islam, that alhamdulillah we've seen them throughout eras and history, living in harmony with non-Muslims from all religions. We need to take interfaith further because that's what our country needs now, what the world needs now in general. Interfaith is not just about talks, it's not about compromising. You're not even, I'm coming to change your views, you change my views, or change my religion and change your religion. I'm here to work on values with you so that we can show our community how our religions are supporting, especially in a secular country. A religion to fit in a secular country is really hard. But when the message is going hand in hand with the values of the country and the values of cultures and religions, then you will have a message of Islam or any religion that is fitting in properly.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Alaa. Thank you so much for joining the Out of Interest podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Now, we are joined by Muzammil as well. And I have to come off the icebreaker, which I mentioned to you before. And you won Man of the Year 2022. And Muzammil was also the finalist. And you got it off him.
Yeah, he beat me.
And he has been hurt, extremely hurt, since that day. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring him on the podcast so we could talk this out.
I cry myself to sleep every night over that. I am deeply, deeply hurt by that.
He has the certificate on his desk. But he's still very proud of it. Where's your certificate?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother Ali and Sheikh Muzammil. It's an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you in Hijaz podcast. And thank you so much again for hosting me and all the work that you're doing for the community. May Allah bless you.
Thank you.
And Ali, I call you always a troublemaker because you make a lot of nice jokes. May Allah bless you, Ali. And Sheikh Muzammil is my dear brother, and Professor Talal Yassin as well. It was something that is, showing or highlighting the achievements of the community rather than the title itself. So having a group of Muslim men and Muslim women being there, the community highlighted, because we're in a time now that sometimes Muslims are accused of not doing enough for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And having an award that is highlighting what Muslims are doing is so important these days, regardless of the winner. But we at least show that there's a group of men and women, young Muslims, males and females, that are participating in making Australia a better country, Sheikh Muzammil. And that's what made me so happy. And even seeing some successful people like Hijaz Finance in the area of finance, seeing Fatima Payman in the area of politics, seeing a lot of achievers even in cooking and making food for the community. That was something that we have to be proud of. And this is the best response to those that do not have an opportunity to show their great work in the community. So I do not really care about the titles, but I really care about seeing my community progressing and making a big difference in Australia, which is one of the main messages of our presence in Australia.
Now, you're a very, very humble man. The thing is, after that award, like I've known you for a long time, but this was the first time where I Googled you up.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Surely they gave this award on the basis of something. So when I Googled you up, I saw the body of work that you do for the community. I'm like, mashallah, it's not just by chance that this man has won this award, because you do a lot. Yes, people like myself and Talal, yes, we do whatever we can, but we'd probably have more of a corporate edge to it that we do. But yours is very community, from the community, for the community type of stuff. And mashallah, it's very, very commendable.
All the work that you do. Thank you so much for your kind words. You and Professor Talal are doing great work, but inshallah we hope that Allah will accept from us all.
What are you most proud of what you've done in the last year? Because like Muzammil said, you've done a lot.
Wallahi Ali, when I came to Australia, I always say that I didn't know anything about this country. Right. And I was even going to Germany one day, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made my journey start here in Australia. Especially I studied Islamic studies in Al-Azhar University about the Muslim minorities that are living as a minority in Western countries. And this is an important course to understand what it is to be Muslim in a Western country, which is sometimes very challenging. And my main focus from day one is how can I get a message to connect with youth and also to be spread out to the non-Muslim community. Because when I was in high school, I read about Islamophobia. I even saw some tensions that are happening in some Western countries between Muslims and non-Muslims, and I was always wondering why this is happening. I had some teachers coming from the UK. I had a professor called Idris Tawfiq, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. He passed away a few years ago, and he was a priest in Vatican. And Sheikh Muzammil came from England, and he was one of the teachers and one of the people that embraced Islam because of one of the young people in the street, polishing the shoes, in Egypt, in Cairo especially. It's a very busy city. And he was with a delegation coming from the Vatican to visit Cairo, and he passed by a young boy that is polishing the shoes, and he says, "Assalamu alaikum." So the priest asked, "What is this young boy saying in Arabic?" He said, they translated to him, he says, "Peace be upon you." And when he's talking about his story, he said, I was really asking myself what kind of peace that young boy is talking about, and peace that is happening in the world, especially when he was one of those that witnessed September 11. And he said, I don't even believe in peace coming from Muslims or the majority of Muslims. And then when he searched about that word, peace in Islam, and he read, and this is something that we would like to not encourage all the time, just to read about Islam, but to see the example as well of Muslims that are translating the words and actions of Islam. Because one of the scholars said, in Arabic, I would say it in Arabic and English, وانتصر محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم حين صنع أصحابه نموذجا حيا من إسلامه نموذج يأكل الطعام ويمشي في الأسواق نموذج يراه الناس فيرون الإسلام. He said that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving success with his message when he worked on a group of people that people see in the markets, see in all areas of work and life, like Hijaz, finance, and having Sheikh Muzammil in the area of finance. And this is a translation of what we understand of Islamic finance through you as a scholar, as Muslims that are working in that field, not providing a service only to the Muslims but also to the non-Muslims. And we explain to them how Islamic finance is actually a successful system that we could have for even Western countries. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ did the same thing. He worked on graduating groups of people who were the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them, so that they can show people what Islam is. And he even went further to say they were the examples that people see in the markets and everywhere, and then they know what Islam is through them. Sorry. Unfortunately, now Sheikh Muzammil sometimes will say, please do not look at what Muslims are doing and then go back to the text and what the Prophet did. So this is not really helping Muslims that are living in Western countries, because some people wouldn't even read. Islamophobia, when we look at that, which has replaced Orientalism, because Orientalism was just focusing on the knowledge, on the text of the Quran or the Sunnah, and criticizing that. Even they had to study the language of Arabic to know how to understand it. Replacing that, or that was replaced by Islamophobia, that takes a few seconds on some news or any of the newspapers that people could read about Islam and Muslims, and that leaves an impression in their hearts that Muslims are bad. Muslims are not Australians enough. Muslims cannot live in this country peacefully. So that's what Islamophobia is doing. So how can a Muslim change that? You don't even have the chance to show a book or the text that you read or the way you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you have to show that through your manners, through an interaction of 10 seconds with people, exactly like what Islamophobia is doing. That could be through meeting Sheikh Muzammil or Brother Ali in the streets and giving something, interacting with people for a few seconds, doing something of help and support, and referring that to our Islamic manners and morals. That makes a lot of change. And getting back to my Brother Ali's question, that was my main goal. How can we work on reaching out to non-Muslim communities that do not know about us? We're not waiting for them just to come to us, and we just finished the Mosque Open Day a few days ago. And we also reach out. I was in Gisborne Church, which is in one of the regional areas in Victoria. And for the first time, Sheikh Muzammil, in 13 years, they have a conference, an annual conference. And in the church, we had a large number of people coming. And for the first time in 13 years, they have a Muslim speaker that talks to them about Islam. And you can imagine even older generations that lived with Muslims for so many years, and they never interacted with a Muslim. And sometimes what they see about Islam and Muslims is just a piece of news on a piece of information on the news about Muslims. We have people that are doing wrong things from all communities and all religions. We had Christchurch that happened exactly in the same month in March 3 years ago. And we never associate that with Christianity, with the Christians. We say he's a person that misunderstood human values. And then unfortunately we see some news, some media, some politicians that would associate any wrong or any misbehavior to Islam and Muslims. That unfortunately has a negative impact on the hearts of our Australian Muslim brothers and sisters. And that's why it is so important to reach out to them and tell them about who we are.
Yeah.
Can we stop Islamophobia? I feel like it's a pretty impossible task. Because you're fighting up against all these massive news outlets, rather.
Yeah.
It's almost like impossible.
Yeah. Wallahi, Brother Ali.
It is prophesized too that the Muslims are going to get a lot of hate.
Yes.
So you can't really fight the prophecy.
That's true. Yeah, Islamophobia started from the time of the Prophet, when they even tried to create doubts. When we have the incident of Al-Isra wal Mi'raj, for example.
Yeah.
So the first thing they did is reaching out to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. They said to him, your friend is claiming so and so that he had this trip in part of the night. What do you think? So we had that as well, creating doubts, Islamophobia, spreading fear and hatred towards Muslims and minorities in general. I believe that if we all have one goal to work on as a Muslim community, and we put, fighting against Islamophobia and racism as one of our main goals, whether you have different madhahib, different areas of work, different groups of Muslims, we should all work on one goal, which is fighting against Islamophobia under the leadership of any organization that can take the lead, regardless of what madhab they are practicing. We are ready, because we are at the end of the day called Muslims, even when we come from different sects as well. They deal with all of us as Muslims, and that's why we need to have a plan. Hopefully, inshallah, that will end. Islamophobia is a big agenda, unfortunately, that is supported by some media, some agendas that really need a lot of work to work against. Yeah.
Sheikh Alaa, there was an article published, I think it's in February 2017, about yourself in the Sydney Morning Herald, and the heading says that you're Sheikh Alaa El Zokm and you are a moderate Muslim.
Yes. They put it actually the face of moderate Islam.
Moderate Islam.
Yes. And
now, my question to you is, obviously moderate Islam or a moderate Muslim is what is seen by the West to be the opposite of an extremist Muslim or extremist Islam.
Yes.
What's your interpretation of that? How do we define what a moderate Muslim is?
Yes.
And what's an extreme Muslim?
Yes.
Because it's the extreme Muslim that I think most people are fearful of.
Yes.
Western and Muslim.
Yes, true.
I would fear an extreme Muslim.
Yes.
I think we all would.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's that, but now the question becomes, okay, how do we define moderate Islam?
Yes.
And in your perspective as a sheikh,
yes.
What do you have to say about that?
Exactly.
Obviously, you've been classified as the poster child of moderate Muslims.
Yes, that's true. That's a very, very good question, Sheikh Muzammil, and I would actually call it the accurate way of calling it, and that comes when I understand the context of moderate Muslim and Islam here more and more. There is nothing that is called moderate and extremist Islam. Islam is one message that is understood through the scholars of Islam, that alhamdulillah we've seen them throughout eras and history, living in harmony with non-Muslims from all religions. Even they were the reason for some non-Muslims to be protected, to live in peace and safety from other people that are persecuting them. And we always give Sheikh Muzammil the example of Muslims living in Spain, in Andalus, which is the golden era of Muslims when they lived for 800 years. And people that left their countries out of being oppressed and persecuted, they came under the protection of Muslims. They were ministers, they were educators, they were successful people progressing in their life, having the freedom of practicing their religion as well. So I would, if I go back to that article, I would not call it moderate Islam. I would call it maybe moderate Muslim, because we have moderation in everything, and Allah named the nation of the Prophet ﷺ ummatan wasatan, a moderate nation. And we have a moderate Muslim, we have a moderate Christian, we have a moderate Jew, and we have some people that have like some extremist thoughts and ways of thinking. So as you said, I totally agree with you, and I gave the example in the Gisborne church. I said the number of Muslims that were killed by ISIS were more than the number of non-Muslims that were killed by ISIS. So the people that left Syria, the families, the children, the people from other countries, were more than the non-Muslims that were targeted and killed by non-Muslims. And that's exactly the explanation of what you said. Yes, we would fear an extremist Muslim. We would fear an extremist Christian, an extremist Jew, an extremist person that has any ideology of hate and hatred and enmity, regardless of the religion itself or the culture. Because I believe that religions would not call, faiths would not call for any, hatred or extremism or killing of any people just because you disagree with them. But when we have an incident like Christchurch, for example, that resulted in more than 55 Muslims to be killed, no, then this is a red flag for Australia and New Zealand, that maybe we need to work together as government, as non-Muslim community, as Muslim community, against Islamophobia and hate in general towards any minority. So I totally agree with you that it's not only the Western countries, it's not only the non-Muslim brothers and sisters that live with us that would be in fear from a Muslim extremist, but we also would be in fear from that, because we wouldn't like any Muslim to be extremist. And we have to work together to not make extremism dominate in Western countries by any people.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Now, your day job is that you're an imam. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, imams and their role in our society has changed a lot.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, and Ali and I are both born and brought up over here.
Yeah.
The imam that you saw in the masjid was generally someone who was very grey-haired and old and
Doesn't know English.
didn't know English, and you just felt that they were there just for religious observances, and that's it. They would lead the prayer, they would give the sermon on Friday, and you saw them a little bit in Ramadan, and that's really about it.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think that's what's left a lot of today's younger community very disconnected from mosques.
Yes.
They don't go.
Yes.
Like, you're the imam of a mosque. You tell me how many people under the age of 45 or 50 are in your congregation today. It's very, very few. And that's becoming more and more the case now.
Yeah.
So so that means now we have to change something.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, we can't change the religion of Islam, but we can change how we practice it, or how we how we exhibit these sorts of places to our younger communities.
Yeah.
What are you as an imam doing? What's the strategy over here? How do we bring back the mosque and the youth together?
May Allah bless you, Sheikh Muzammil. And as you said, it's I would actually say that it's more challenging to have a mufti or a sheikh like you that is born and raised in this country. It's very challenging and very hard. You know, maybe in Egypt I had the opportunity to do my Islamic studies course as my main study, but you did both after your financial studies. And it's really hard to get a qualified young Muslim imam that is studying both knowledges. We need both knowledges. We need a successful financial person, and at the same time he's a scholar. In the golden times of Islam and Muslims, we had Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina and all these scholars. They way specialized in medicine, in all their types of knowledge, in addition to being a scholar. So we need to revive, we need to get that time back to us. And having a scholar that is understanding youth, that is close to them in age, that speaks the language, that understands what they go through as well, because they can have an imam that is even having all these qualities of speaking English, born and raised here, and unfortunately they don't understand the requirements of the society that we live in. So it's so important. That's why Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah put the criteria of the mufti that is giving the fatwa, considering the three things that we always talk about in fatwa: the time, the place, and the circumstances that people are living. And he said the person that is giving the fatwa, out of not understanding the context, he has misguided people. So what kind of fatwa that we're going to give, especially when we deal with contemporary issues of Islamic finance, when we deal with hex, when we deal with vaccination, when we deal with the contemporary issues that have come up on the surface and we didn't hear about that before. Alhamdulillah, Allah has enabled us to have so many things that Muslims in Australia 30 years ago did not have, one of which is Islamic finance. So when you have that facilitated it for Muslims. And I see that a successful imam, we had Mufti Mink who came here before, and he said a successful imam as well is that person that is getting out to the people rather than waiting for them to come to him. So that really connected well with me, and I said, yes, I believe in that. And also understanding the circumstances and the needs of the community. Sometimes you work, alhamdulillah, we have different groups of Muslims from the different approaches that they have, and all of them, we praise their work and we ask Allah to grant them the best, inshallah. But there are some gaps, Sheikh Muzammil, especially in understanding the politics and what's happening in our community. We need an imam exactly like what the Prophet ﷺ did. He migrated to Medina and he did two things. The first one is mosques for the Muslims to discuss the Muslim matters and affairs, and the other thing is establishing the Treaty of Medina with the Jews and the non-Muslims that were living in the city of Medina. So that's which is a reflection of our engagement with political life, with social life, with everything in life. So I would really see an ideal imam that is not only doing the job at the mosque, but also getting out of the mosque sometimes. But that requires an understanding of the committee that is running the mosque.
That was another question I had, right?
Exactly.
Because your style and your approach, which I've observed, is I think a very, very good approach. But it is very different to what people are used to.
Yes.
So all of a sudden now your first level of resistance is the people, your immediate committee, your immediate community who say, why are you associating with this group?
Yes.
Why are you supporting women's sport?
Yes.
Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Oh, we don't agree with that. We don't want to see our Imam associated with these things.
Right. Yes.
So then how do you find that balance between, these are people technically who are employing me,
yes,
and that's my job, I need to support my family, and secondly, I have to do what I feel is the right thing for me and for my community.
Yes.
How do you reconcile between that?
Very good question, Sheikh Muzammil, and that comes from your understanding of how the dynamics of the relationship between the Imam and the committee is. And it's very tough and hard. So when you have a committee that understands, alhamdulillah, in the mosque that I have the job of being an imam at, we have an Egyptian committee of the mosque. And it's good that they are all on the same page of understanding what the role of the imam is. And that was our agreement from the start. I told them, leading Dhuhr or Asr prayer, sometimes even Maghrib and Isha, is not going to be my main focus. There's a lot of people that need us to talk, they need us to explain and support. There are contemporary issues that we can have a discussion. If we want to talk knowledge, we can do that. Exactly like the example that you mentioned, supporting women playing sports and soccer especially. And how would that happen? And when it happens, Sheikh Muzammil, when we engage some activities like that, what is our goal and purpose? Is it agreeing with everything or disagreeing with the whole activity in general? So we are there definitely for a reason. Sometimes we could be even against something in that activity, but we look at the bigger goal of being there. So for example, when I engage with some sisters playing sports, we have some of them that would not be wearing hijab, for example, and would not having the requirements of Islam to play the sports. Then my goal there is not to say what is halal and haram in that. They already play. They already have that as their job and their task. But they would need me for another type of support. Could be spiritually, could be emotionally, could be asking even about the best way of doing that. Because I'm not assuming that everybody has the knowledge or everybody was raised in a way to enable them to do the right thing in the first place. That's why when we engage in activities that would look like, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of criticism about many things that I'm doing. And I'm happy to receive that, as long as people are approaching and they inquire about why you do that. So when we have, and I have to call the example of Hijaz Financial Services, being the sponsor of the Afghan women's team, that when I knew about and I saw you in the event, especially in the big game in the stadium with Melbourne Victory and Manchester United, it was announced there. I didn't know anything about that before. And when I saw that Sheikh Muzammil, I said, Hijaz, yes, that Hijaz that Sheikh Muzammil is working at. And I just searched it quickly, and I saw that it's a Muslim organization that is sponsoring 20 Muslim girls. And that made me and my wife so happy because we were there at the game. And the girls came with the T-shirt of Victory and having Hijaz on it. I said, this is exactly what we need. There is a proper understanding on what these girls need. If I ask you about the Islamic perspective, did you go that from an Islamic perspective? Did you consider how they play and why they play soccer, whether it's halal or haram? No, we wouldn't support. But we have to be there because we have great values that we share with our sisters. There are 20 Muslim girls at the Melbourne Victory, and the non-Muslim community in general have been providing a great support to them. And it was our time to step in and do something as well, and we show that we care for our Muslim girls. And that's what Hijaz has done, and that's opened the door for me, honestly, to talk to many other Muslim organizations. Because if it wasn't for Hijaz to be there, I would be hesitant to talk about that. Not being confident enough that some Muslim organizations would follow the footsteps of Hijaz supporting these Muslim girls. So that's what should happen, Sheikh Muzammil, when the Imam and the committee have a vision, have a goal to work on. Rather than leading the prayer, giving some talks at the mosque, this is going to happen. We have, mashallah, in the Heidelberg Mosque, more than 10 Huffaz of the Somali community that, mashallah, even help us in Ramadan with Taraweeh and Qiyamul Layl. That's their job. They can do that. We can even train them to be imams. But for the imams, for you and I and so many imams, just to lead a Dhuhr prayer and prioritize that over, a talk in a university to young Muslims, a talk to some non-Muslim brothers and sisters listening to us about what Islam is, I wouldn't think that this is matching with fiqh al-awlawiyat, the fiqh and the wisdom of prioritizing what we need to do, especially in a Western country.
You can have a greater impact. It's about, what can I do that has the greatest impact? That's what matters the most.
Yes.
And going back to your question about, why we supported the Afghan women's team, it didn't require much deliberation on our part. It just felt like the right thing to do.
Yes.
I think
At first I was against it, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
And I said it at the Hijaz dinner last year to the girls. I admitted to them, I'm like, girls, look, I was against it.
Yeah.
Zamil was for it, Dad was for it.
Mm-hmm.
I was against it
Yeah.
because I knew for a fact, because I take care of the marketing.
Yes.
And I'm like, we're going to get backlash for this.
Yes.
And we are.
Yes.
We've had clients email us saying we are leaving Hijaz because you guys are supporting
Yes.
female athletes,
Yes.
right? And our message has always been, put the female athlete aside.
Yes.
They are Muslims,
Exactly.
right? They might be Sunni, Shia, it doesn't matter. They are Muslims
Yes.
that fled. They've got no one here.
Yes.
They have no one here,
Yes.
right? And if we don't sponsor them,
Mashallah.
right? Melbourne Victory's like, you know what? Enough putting money into this.
You're right.
We're cancelling this,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that a lot of Muslims need to understand. It's put the Muslim factor, halal, like you said, put it aside.
Yes.
They're human beings at the end of the day.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you might walk in the street and see a hobo begging for money. You're going to give him a couple of bucks. He's not Muslim.
You're going to check.
You're still going to help.
Yes.
Islam teaches us to always be a good Muslim.
May Allah bless you.
And that's what we try to tell these people. But they're so stubborn.
Yes.
Right? They don't understand these things.
Yes.
And then that's where like the whole extremist side things comes in. It's like they're blinded by so much extremism.
Yes.
That's like, you know what? Screw you guys. You guys doing wrong.
You're right.
I'm the most perfect Muslim in the world, so we're leaving you guys and we're going to go back to haram. But then, like, it's crazy.
May
It's
Allah
crazy.
bless you, Ali. That's totally right, wallahi. And I'm telling you, it brought a lot of happiness to my heart because I really needed to see that Muslim organization and Muslim people stepping in and helping. And I talk to these girls, and the first thing they tell me is how Hijaz took them to be part of the company. And that's not an easy thing. Many of them are doing labor work out of this organization. And Hijaz has taken them with the level of English they speak, with the ability that they have that could not be even meeting the criteria of the educational system in Australia and the working system in Australia. You are helping them to progress in their life, to be a success, to work with Muslims. And I'm telling you, when they talk about that, they are so proud of belonging to an organization like Hijaz. And as you said, what is the concept of providing support to people in life, Muslims and non-Muslims? Even we have the sadaqah that we have as Muslims. You know, the sadaqah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not limit that when we study the sharia or the rulings of sadaqah just to Muslims. We have zakah, especially for Muslims. And you have the charity, the other one for everybody, whether a Muslim, non-Muslim. And Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu practiced that, giving from Baytul Mal to the people that are not following Islam. So what is your concept of aid and support? And how do you understand that Islamically? Would you associate it with the perfect Muslim that is practicing Islam so they would give them some support? Then we would never give support to non-Muslim then. Because we just look for the ideal example of a Muslim, Sheikh Muzammil, to give them the sadaqah. No, well, we're not even giving a sadaqah. We're giving support to them so they can be good Muslims. They can be with us. They know that we have an Islamic financial system in Hijaz Finance that is supporting the vast majority of the Muslim community, and they are participating in making this happen. And some of them, I know now, they are putting in their mind to study finance so that they can have more opportunities here. So that's what you have done for them, and that's what we show our non-Muslim communities, Victory and all the other organizations that are supporting. Alhamdulillah, that Muslim community is always generous and supportive, not only with Muslims, wallahi, with all communities, with all people from our religion.
And the girls did say that they've been looked after more by the non-Muslims than the Muslims. Because a lot of them, I think, live in Dandenong.
Yes.
And the Afghan community didn't really embrace them as well.
Yes.
So it's going to come to like what have we become?
Yeah.
You know, we're so divided.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yes. When you get trauma, Ali, from Muslims.
Yeah.
When you get a trauma from Muslims, and then you come here, and then it should be the first hand that is welcoming you is a Muslim hand. Because you had a trauma by people that misunderstood Islam, banning them from playing, from studying, from going to uni, from practicing so many things, Sheikh Muzammil, in life that Islam is not against. So, you know, emotionally and as a way to deal with the trauma that they had in Afghanistan is to welcome them through the hands of Muslims first. But unfortunately, sometimes they would be criticized, and even criticize the people that are helping when they are Muslims. But inshallah, I trust the understanding and the approach of Hijaz, prioritizing, and may Allah reward you, letting me know this as well, that you had some clients calling and saying that's because of what you do, may Allah reward you for that, and staying in the support for the girls and supporting them, because that's a religious duty upon us, and I'm sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will consider that in your business as well, inshallah.
We're locked in for 2-3 years anyway, so
yeah.
without leaving anytime soon.
Exactly. Sheikh, slightly moving away from the women in sport topic, which I think we could talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
Another thing that you occupy yourself a lot with is interfaith or multicultural dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think obviously in Australia that's really, really important, because Muslims here are minority culture, minority community, and I think building that awareness and that what you mentioned earlier about becoming accessible to people, that's so important. Yeah. If you look at other religion-based communities, your Christian community, your Jewish communities and whatnot, I don't know, it may just be me, but I just see that they have progressed so much further in catering comprehensively for the community. So, for example, you have Christian hospitals, you have Christian schools, you have Christian aged care facilities, Christian cemeteries. Yeah. The whole thing, the whole infrastructure is there in place for them.
Jews do it the best.
Jews do it the best. Yeah. Why is our community so far behind?
Yeah.
Why is it taking us so long to cater for even what I consider to be bare basics? Really, we're not doing luxury items here. We're talking about the bare fundamentals.
Yeah. You can't even open up a halal butcher without getting criticized.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
So from your perspective as a Muslim community leader, what do you think is the biggest challenge, and how on earth do we overcome that?
Yeah, Barakallah Fik, Sheikh Muzammil. Mashallah, questions are very on the topics that we really need to talk about. I believe that, alhamdulillah, the Muslim community is getting there through some organizations like Hijaz and other organizations in different areas. But I would say about the interfaith dialogues and the interaction with the non-Muslim community in general, even government. I have straight after this the conference and the forum with the ICV about the Religious Freedom Bill. That when we talk about elections, when we talk about participation in political life, sometimes, Sheikh Muzammil, there is not any type of awareness about that. That's why we're starting with the ICV to establish some forums about that, and that's what Islam is. And getting back to the question of the interfaith dialogues, I participated in various types of interfaith dialogues, starting from sitting with a group of faith leaders together on one table, not even having any conversation, but just taking a photo and going home, which I still see a positive side of it. At least we came together on the table and we sat together. To another type of interfaith, which is like having a discussion about one of the topics, like Islam and science, Islam and sports, Islam and women, when we have the International Women's Day, and how Islam is supporting that. And that's the main question that everybody's asking about, and the verses of women in Quran, especially hitting women, and all these verses, they are all regular questions that we have all the time. And how do you explain that? And the third type of interfaith is working together in some values, and these values, Sheikh Muzammil, and that type of interfaith is my goal always, because this is what I have seen when we have a process for Palestine. And I see that almost half of the people there coming from the non-Muslims standing for the rights of Palestinian people, and standing for the protection of Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa that is attacked every year in Ramadan, and standing for the protection of all the places of worship. It did not take me time even to go to the church when the Ukrainian people were attacked. And I did not wait for them to call upon the community to come. No, I said I have to go there because I will call upon these brothers and sisters when we have our people attacked as well. So we see them there, and that's what we take from interfaith dialogues. If you practice your religion, you are free to do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, we need to have a common value that we work on. If we just show as religious leaders, you and I believe in respect. You and I believe in peaceful coexistence. You and I believe in the sacredness of all the places of worship. And so what can we do for our communities to see that in practice? So we do some aid work together. So at the Heidelberg Mosque, we do some aid work with the Uniting Church. And we send that to everybody as a sadaqah that we have as Muslims. And when it comes to values, that Australia is always talking about And we connect religion to these values as well, one of which is freedom. When we have the Religious Freedom Bill, we need to ensure that the religious places for all religions, including Muslims, are teaching the values of Islam. And the rules that would be issued and the laws that would be issued should be supporting that, because we are living in the most multicultural country in the world, in the country that is welcoming all people from all 120 religions in Australia. So we do not want to go back to the time when people used to say, go back to where you came from. And they used to say it in words, but now there is a consequence legally for that. And then we start to issue a law that is making it hard for minorities to live and practice their values according to their religion. So that's what we take from Interfaith. And that's what we call upon. When I went to the Gisborne Church, I said, we need to work on charity together. We need to fight against Islamophobia and racism. Against a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, we need to stand against that, and we do some actions. I need some non-Muslim brothers and sisters with me when I talk about Islamophobia, because I will be with you when you talk about anti-Semitism or anti-Christianity or any religion. So that's what we take from Interfaith, Sheikh Muzammil, and it is so important that we have religious leaders, because a leader is leading a large number in congregation. And even with the Religious Freedom Bill, we worked with the church, with the synagogues, with the temples. We issued a statement together through the ANIC, Australian National Imams Council, and we issued that statement together as places of worship and religious leaders. And that's the strength of religious leaders working together. But with all due respect to that type of interfaith, when you and I and all the religious leaders are confirming that we are respecting each other, respecting our beliefs and places of worship, we know that. And the law is ensuring that, and the law is supporting that. But I think we need to take Interfaith further to another or to a more effective way of it, because that's what our country needs now, what the world needs now in general. Interfaith is not just about talks. It's not about compromising. It's not about I'm coming to change your views, you change my views, or change my religion and change your religion. I'm here to work on values with you, so that we can show our community how our religions are supporting, especially in a secular country. A religion to fit in a secular country is really hard. But when the message is going hand in hand with the values of the country and the values of cultures and religions, then you will have a message of Islam or any religion that is fitting in properly in the community, that would be even needed to be practiced. And the example of vaccination is very clear. When the government failed to send the message of encouraging people to get vaccinated, including the Muslim community. I live in Roxburgh Park, and where the majority of Arabs are living. And that message of go take the vaccination, we heard sometimes in the news that we need to draw a line and we categorize this area as a troublemaking area. We don't let these people go out of that area. And then, guys, we spoke to a government and said, no, this is not the language here. You talk to people. You talk to the people through translated materials, because we have vast majority that are not even watching the news, that are not having social media. You need to talk to them in Arabic, so that they understand. You need to give them a religious message. So we had the priest, the Christian leader, and the Muslim leader coming. We were knocking on the doors. We were sitting in the vaccinations hubs, translating to the people. Why is it important to take the vaccine? And that's the impact of religion, Sheikh Muzammil. In a secular country, sometimes the language of the government is not the best to the citizens, but the language of a religious leader could make a big difference.
So do you think we have too many religious leaders? Because, there's no one voice in Australia. We have two grand muftis. Right? Yeah. Apparently there's a real one, apparently there's a con artist. It's just what is going on? If I was, who's the Prime Minister? Albanese.
Yes.
If I was Albanese, Chile.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm looking at two grand muftis.
Yes.
And 1 million Islamic leaders.
Yes.
I'm not gonna take Islam serious.
Yes, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you think we need one voice, one strong voice, which in my opinion is almost impossible right now, the way the community is?
Yeah. Barakallah fik, Ali. Very good question. Yes, we need one voice when it comes to certain issues, but having one voice all the time with all the issues is going to be impossible. And because we have different ways of thinking, I would give the basic example they're showing is the month of Ramadan.
We can't even get that right.
Sighting the moon, and instead of the moon sighting, they call it the moon fighting now. so we have that issue that we would never, agree upon. But Ya Ali, I want to give the Jum'ah about that. I say the following: even though I belong to the the Fatwa Council and the ANIC statement. But I say to the mosque, I'm not going to even tell you names of organizations. There are some brothers and sisters that will be fasting today, tomorrow may Allah accept from them. And some other brothers and sisters will be fasting the day after, may Allah accept from them. They're all trying different ways of ijtihad, which is trying the best to understand the text. And there are, of course, more accurate ways of understanding the text and less accurate ways. But that doesn't mean that we should attack one another. Especially saying, you are out of the sunnah, you're out of the sunnah. No, the scholars and the ulama are trying their best to figure out what is the best for the Muslim community. And they do it through a methodology of understanding the hadith or the ayah of Quran. Accusing that alim, that scholar, that mufti of deceiving the community or getting out of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, why would we do that? So that's what Shaykh Muzammil, how I do with the statement of the month of Ramadan. I have my brothers and sisters from Jama'at al-Tabligh, for example, and I have the head of the group with me, Dr. Shabir Ahmed, with us in the Fatwa Council, and we agree together. These are the manners of the scholars of Ali. When we come together, we say, we don't want to have our community fighting because of seeing the ulama fighting. So we issue the statements, and we call upon community to respect that statement and making dua for the other group that Allah will accept from them, inshallah. When an average Muslim is listening to this Ali, even though we have a big disagreement, then they will say, yeah, so each group is trying their best. If I follow that opinion of fasting after tomorrow, may Allah accept from me. If I follow that opinion of fasting tomorrow, may Allah accept from me. So we give people different opinions and different options. But if we take it to the area of disagreement and fighting, yes, I'm going to accuse you of being out of the sunnah, and you're going to accuse me of being out of the sunnah, and the average Muslim is going to be the one that is paying the price for that. They say, I don't know where to go. Exactly like what you said. And what we used to have that in Ramadan especially. People say, I don't know if my fasting is right or wrong. I don't know. My father is fasting tomorrow. I'm fasting today. My father has Eid tomorrow. I have Eid today. We say, then brother, relax. No problem. May Allah accept from both of you. That's fine.
Not everyone has a clean heart like that. Like you go on, when it's Ramadan time, Imam's Council will put a Facebook post up, and you want to comment, like 600 comments, they're all fighting.
Yes.
There's a massive
fighting,
battle of Badr, man.
cursing, taking out of religion, taking out of the sunnah. And that's not the manner of the ulama, Ali. And we hope, inshallah, that the ulama will talk more about that. We have a fiqh of adab al-ikhtilaf, the manners of disagreeing with people. So how can we disagree in a polite way? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we talk about Laylatul Qadr itself. Why Laylatul Qadr was not identified by Sheikh Muzammil after the Prophet ﷺ came to the people telling them when it is exactly. And he said, Ama wa innakuma tashajarta, you had a fight. Tashajarata or talahayta. I don't remember the word in Arabic. But you had a fight together. So Allah has lifted the time of the Laylatul Qadr from you to know about because of the fight that you had. So we tell people when we have Laylatul Qadr, and this incident, Sheikh Muzammil, when the Prophet was coming to tell them about the time of Laylatul Qadr, it is because of your fight that Allah has decided not to tell you about that time because of your fight. So
Those fights back then too?
Yeah, of course.
Disagreements.
We haven't changed one bit.
Yeah.
Of course, there's fights always, but who can reconcile between the opinions? Who can bring people together? That's the hardest job that needs a lot of work.
Well, what do you follow? Do you follow moonsighting? Do you follow technology? What do you?
Yeah, we have a methodology.
If you're worried you're gonna get cancelled, you don't have to say it. It's
of
fine.
course. No, that's fine. We have at the Fatwa Council, we have all the schools of opinion. We have the former dhahab with us. Through 12 scholars in the Fatwa Council from all the scholars of Australia, specializing in fiqh. And we have the methodology of the possibility of sighting the moon. So we have pure calculation, Sheikh Muzammil, as you know. We have pure sighting of the moon through the naked eyes. We have a methodology that is in between. Because we use the verse of Quran, Ya Ali, وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put the moon in different phases and stages that the moon does not become lazy one day, not come on time. So we know according to that the sun or the moon will set or the sun will set at that time on that day. I can tell you in 50 years. That's the knowledge that we have now because it's a system that Allah created. Sheikh Muzammil will have a trust in the train system. We say train is coming 7:10, it's coming on time. And people know and they plan the whole day based on that trip. What about Allah's system? It is more accurate. So we say we have the possibility of sighting the moon through that knowledge. If we have the modern technology like what we have around here in the studio, and we try to sight the moon with that or through that, we'll be able to see it. because we calculate the difference between when the moon sets and the sun sets and how long the moon is staying in the sky. I made khutbah about that one day in the Jum'ah, so that we explain not pure calculation, not pure sighting the moon through the naked eyes, but a way that is in between through the modern technology that we have. Some scholars would not use that. They would say صوموا لرؤيته وأفطروا لرؤيته as a ta'abbud way. A ta'abbud means taking the hadith as a way to worship Allah through that methodology of sighting the moon, Sheikh Muzammil. But the other scholar said we take it as a methodology, not as ta'abbud, not as a way to worship Allah through that. That's the difference between the scholars. Scholars would like to implement it literally. No, I worship Allah through doing the methodology that the Prophet ﷺ did, literally as he did. But we say to them, what about if there's a modern technology that will help you to do that? Would you use it? They say no, still, because I would like to follow the way that the Prophet did it as a ta'abbud, following the sunnah. But we say if a person does that, may Allah accept, and a person that does not do that and depends on the telescope, for example, doing that without sighting the moon by the naked eyes, which requires another effort to be there in a certain time, would you consider that person wrong? They say no, they just use a different methodology to identify or sight the moon. So we accept. We need that type of scholar, but not that type of scholar that is saying, no, you're not worshipping Allah when you do that. You are out of the sunnah when you do that. So this is a methodology that is combining between scientific knowledge of the moon stages and phases and also the Islamic knowledge that would help us to sight the moon.
It's a great way of explaining it.
Yeah. It's briefly done, but if I give an example of even the times, so what time there is a conference in Turkey that is talking about the moon sighting, and they issued a document of 1,000 pages. That's talking about the phase of the moon, Sheikh Muzammil, the age of the moon as well, because some people and the degree of the moon in the sky. It's a very big knowledge, and subhanallah, through the specialists in that knowledge, we are able to identify the moon, saying or seeing both ways, both methodologies, as ways that can be
Sure.
used.
How about I feel like sometimes Indonesia sees the moon first.
Yeah.
Right. So Indonesia will see the moon, yet Australia hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
So Indonesia fasts, we don't fast.
Yeah.
Or some people in Australia don't
Yeah.
fast. Does Indonesia have its own moon, or like how does that work?
No, the people that sight the moon here are going actually to the next option, because we have 3 stages. The first one is sighting the moon in your own country.
Right.
Second one is sighting the moon in the closest Muslim country, and you follow them. So the closest Muslim country to us is Indonesia. When they sight the moon and they confirm that it has been sighted, then we follow them. And the third one is going with the majority of the Muslim countries in the world.
Right.
So if, for example, the moon has been sighted in Pakistan, then it's a Muslim country with majority Muslim countries announcing the same thing, then we follow them in Australia. And that's the thing that we use that methodology for. So we should try to sight the moon in Australia first before going to the next option, which is Indonesia as the closest Muslim country to us. When I do that, then I follow the sunnah too, because I try to sight the moon in my own place first. But again, the question is, how would you sight the moon? For those who sight the moon by the naked eye, Sheikh Muzammil, it's impossible here. According to the weather circumstance, very hard, very, very hard. That's why most likely those who sight the moon by the naked eyes are going to fast the second day. Always, from those who fast the first day because of that.
And it's usually a larger crescent that you can see there.
Yes.
You can see, you can tell it's a second day type moon.
Yes.
It's not a first day
When you
moon.
go on Google says it's a new
I love
moon for
this.
that day anyway.
Yes, that's a very important factor. Yes, you can tell it's a second day moon phase as well. Yes, right. Yes, true. But those who depend on the sighting the moon in Indonesia, they have taken the second option before the first, which is the sunnah to sight the moon in your own country first.
So if Indonesia sees the moon, doesn't that mean that we all should just fast?
We can have that as a way.
I think we usually do. That's
But there's
usually
always
the
a
case.
group of people that are like fighting.
Yeah, but Sheikh Muzammil, the good thing is, whenever the moon is sighted in Indonesia, we're fasting already.
Yeah.
So alhamdulillah, we're never in a clash, because the sighting the moon, especially according to that methodology of the scientific knowledge, is proving that, because the moon phase and stage is going to be the same everywhere in the world. It's the same knowledge of identifying and sighting the moon. So if you use that in Indonesia, and we have even the whole world, and that app, Sheikh Muzammil, you can just click the city, it tells you. So it's not just for Australia. It's a moon sighting, gives you the phase of the moon in every city in the world. It's even by cities. So when we do that in Australia here with the Fatwa Council, we're doing 3 cities: Perth, which is the most,
Yeah.
clear one. And the difference between the sunset, when the sun goes, the moon stays in the sky, Sheikh Muzammil, this year for 25 minutes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so you can sight the moon.
Yeah.
But the question is, are 25 minutes enough to sight the moon by the naked eyes? And which angle, which place? That's a problem.
And the weather.
And the weather. Ahsant. Barakallah feek. Ahsant. So through that modern technology, I can sight it quickly. Starting from 14 minutes. So if I have 25 minutes, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
And we use Sydney, Melbourne, to confirm the same thing in 3 cities and gives us the same result. And then we say, let's choose any random country. Put 3 cities in that country, gives you the same result. Exactly the same. Yeah. Because it's the same knowledge or the same methodology that you use for sighting the moon in any country. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Sheikh, a completely different topic.
Yes, sure.
For a little while.
Yes, I love this.
I want to ask something personal. Now, because we're old friends, I know this about you, that you're a young father.
Yes.
You've got young kids.
Yes.
And you recently had your second kid very recently. So congrats on that.
How is she? Sorry.
Yes, Sheikh Muzammil. Yes, I will tell you. Yeah.
Now, you said that you and your family have migrated to Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're young, still in Australia.
Yeah.
What's your strategy or your approach to bringing up kids in this country?
Yeah.
Because as an imam now, obviously you're seeing a lot of the youth, you're seeing a lot of the challenges.
Yeah.
There is naturally an apprehension to say, okay, well, this is going to be tough.
Yes.
Because it's going to be very, very different to the environment that you grew up in.
Yes.
And a lot of the things the strategies that maybe your parents used with you
Yes.
may not work with you and your
That's
kids.
true.
Different era, different place, different temperament, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you find that even as an imam, I'm sure you see this, a lot of parents come to their imams or their school teachers or whatever it is with that concern all the time.
Yes.
My kids, my kids, my kids.
Yes. Barakallah feek.
What's the strategy around that? Have you come up with a game plan on
Yes.
how Sheikh Alaa is going to navigate this?
May Allah
Because
bless you,
again, in spirit of full disclosure, myself and Ali, same position.
Yes.
Young fathers, young parents.
Yes.
And it's something that we talk about quite a bit.
Yes.
Like, how on earth do we navigate this? Because this is
Barakallah
tough.
feek. Yeah. And of course, Sheikh Muzammil, you're asking the question from the perspective of a sheikh that knows that it is really challenging, especially when it comes to our values and our identity. My wife is from here. She's born and raised here. She's from the Lebanese community, and she's born and raised here. And I came from Egypt by myself, and we got married here and have my 2 children. And as you said exactly, Sheikh Muzammil, the way that I look to my children now is different from even dealing with parents who have children before I had my own children. So when I talk to them, sometimes you do not really feel the concern that they have. When a person tells you, Sheikh, I'm worried about my kids living in a Western country and not having the values of the religion practiced. So what do you think? And that's why we have the ahkam of Islam, of staying in Australia. We encourage Muslims to stay in Australia. We don't want them to leave. But again, it's not just about wanting. It's about how the system would help us to stay. That's why, again, when we go back to one of the topics that we discussed, is the importance of engagement, understanding politics. What is our right to ask our government to do? How can we work together as a community to have, Sheikh Muzammil, I would say even there's a lot of researches about identity and keeping the language, and even talking about the Turkish community as one of the communities that are taking, the culture and the language seriously. When I go even to some of our Turkish brothers and sisters in their houses, I see that they still talk the full conversation Turkish. And this is a very good way of protecting the culture, the identity, and the language. Unlike many other people and parents that would even try to speak in English, broken English with their kids, rather than even keeping the language of where they came from. So that's the major change that could happen. And it is not really healthy sometimes, because you need to keep the language for your kids, at least to be connected to where you came from. In case you go back one day, you go at least for a visit with your mother, with your father that you left back home, and sadly your kids cannot communicate with them.
Yeah.
You would like to practice your religion. We have, Sheikh Muzammil, mosques and places of worship. Government is even funding places of worship. But we tell them, thank you so much for supporting our places of worship and having a big mosque. But if we have a big mosque and we cannot practice the values of the religion, unfortunately that's useless. Because the mosque is there for the purpose of teaching the values of our religion. And then we as Muslim community and the government should work together to provide that freedom of worship that we have, and especially living in one of the most leading countries in multiculturalism and respecting faith and cultures in Australia. So we family is one of the main challenges. I call it even the hardest challenge for any Muslim family, to be in a Western country and not to be able to protect the values of a religion is really the hardest. And I have seen the hardest thing of dealing with that when some parents had to leave. I know some parents, they left Australia. They said there is no way for us. We're not capable to protect the identity of our kids and the values that we have been raised with, even as Australians that were born and raised here. They said even 20 years ago is different from what it is now. So having a major change in 20 years or 10 years, now we need to have a big stop with that, and we see why and how we can provide freedom of worship and practicing the values to the minorities in Australia. The other thing, Sheikh Muzammil, is for the families that are living here, I totally echo what you said. The way that we were raised, the way that I was raised in Egypt, I would never use that to be with my kids. It's very hard. And there's a separate topic by itself that Imams and Shaykh are talking about, and even specialists in raising kids. I say to a father at the age of 59 or 60 sometimes, brother, I appreciate what you have done for your kids, but sometimes we need to take a lesson of how to raise kids in a Western country. And there's not a shame. There is no haraj, there is no shame or embarrassment to seek some knowledge. We giving advice to some people, and I go to see a psychologist or a counselor. There's no shame to do that, because seeing a psychologist or a counselor, which is also one of the dilemmas that we have in our community, connecting that to Islam, as you know, and raising the kids in a way, and that's why they say that statement. Some people say that it's even said by Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Some people said by Hassan al-Basri radiallahu anhu. And some scholars, where they say, do not raise your kids the way they were raised, or you were raised by your parents, because they have been living different circumstances from the circumstances that you lived, which is exactly happening here. If I look at the methodology or the way that my parents raised me, and I try to do that, I may end up in jail, according to the law. So that's why we have to see the way that we raise our kids according to what they really need and what they deal with in Australia. And this is an important message that takes me time and khutbahs to talk to parents when the kids are not there as well, in Jum'ah prayers.
I think it's impossible to raise your kids in this country now, because it's almost becoming part of law, because you got all these different identities and genders, and that's being taught at a very young age.
That's cool.
There was a library next to my home that was promoting a drag person coming and talking to literally 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and reading them a book. They're starting that young, and the kids are going to be taught all these things. And then one day my daughter comes and says, Dad, I want to become a microwave or something, a different gender. And if I tell her you can't do it, and she goes and complains to someone, I'm going to jail, or she's going to go to foster parents. So the law is becoming such where it's virtually impossible to teach any sort of values. Right? Oh, it's not even values anymore. It's almost like you can't teach them humanity.
Basic principles.
Basic principles of life. They're taking that away from kids. And I've said this for the last couple of weeks. Zamil would also know. I've made it very vocal in the office where I'm like, eventually I'm going to leave here as well. Because I don't want to see my daughter, seeing all this rubbish. Because you can't then teach them otherwise. Because like I said, if she takes that to a teacher the next day, police are coming and I'm gone. Right?
That's the importance, Ali, and unfortunately, that Islamophobic agenda is aiming for that. Is aiming for Muslims to leave. Because I told you a few years back, Pauline Hanson is not too far away from this time when she said these people have to go back to where they came from. But she had her best friend, Fraser Anning, who was also in Parliament, Sheikh Muzammil. He was removed because of his racism that was, beyond any limitation of values, which was so sad to see in the Australian Parliament that is issuing the law based on values. And we see these two examples still there. Fraser Anning has been removed, luckily, by the genuine and smart Australian community, not only Muslims, everybody that removed that man. And Pauline Hanson is still there, and I hopefully one day she will be removed as well, because such a person is creating tension in communities. And again, going back to the agenda, one of the main aims of Islamophobia is you go back. Yeah, you leave your country, but this could be your country more than me, because you and Sheikh Muzammil and you guys have been born and raised here. What about those who do not know the origin country where they came from? So this is your country. I know my friends and family in Egypt. I have my home still there, but we call Australia home, and we don't want to call it any other thing than home. And again, if this agenda is forcing us to leave our home, Australia, then they have succeeded. And Islamophobia then would succeed as well. And we would not let that happen. We have to work on that, refuting that misunderstanding about Islam and Muslims, and also requesting that we should have our freedom. It's even the name of the bill, Sheikh Muzammil, the Religious Freedom Bill. And we see that's why we have elections, we have democracy, we have that democratic system. Through we ask for our right. I have an Islamic school that I'm sending my kids to. I would like to have my values taught in that school. And that's what I think what we need to focus on before thinking of leaving the country. Because, yes, maybe because we have some parents, we have our grandparents, we have our family members there, it would be easy for us. But what about those Sheikh Muzammil who do not have anyone, and they don't know anyone in their origin or the heritage country where they came from?
You got to also remember, a lot of Muslims are also buying into this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of religious leaders out there that support, these movements.
Yeah.
And I've seen an Islamic society, I don't want to give the names, but the president of it goes to LGBTQ plus whatever it's called, those rallies, and supports it.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the new generation coming up, the new generation of Muslims are more open-minded, and it's like, it's the brain. It's, I don't know, man. I don't know how to explain it. It's
people are free.
It's a big effort to try to fit in. Really.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
I just want to be accepted by
like,
everybody.
why are you going to get cancelled?
Yeah.
Like, you don't agree with it.
If a person is alhamdulillah, we have the mainstream Muslim community that abides by the values, and we have the vast majority, and we have even the ijma' of the ummah, and the consensus of the majority of the ummah is to be considered, not the exceptions or the minority cases that are happening. And alhamdulillah, we have that understanding of our Islamic values in our community. But again, because when we discuss especially this topic, we talk from two perspectives: the religious perspective and the law perspective that we live under here in Australia. So people are free, but at the same time, am I free to teach my values? Am I free to say that to my kids? Am I free to say that anything that goes against my religious values, I do not practice it. I do not implement it in my life, within my family. I need that. And because even that topic, Ali, in Islam, we say, okay, people are free, let them do whatever they want. And the country is providing, according to the law of the country, freedom to deal with any issue. But I would like to have my freedom too, with my family, with my Muslim community, with our values, with our places of worship, that we keep these values practiced. Can we have both? For example, the answer is sometimes no. Or maybe most of the time.
It's impossible.
No,
it's impossible.
Yeah.
Because it's normalizing now.
Yeah.
And us Muslims, we're against it. It's not part of values.
Yeah.
Not even Muslims, it's religion itself is against it. And then when you speak up, that's when you look like an extremist as well.
Yeah. We do not, Ali, we say that not only Islam, we say that religions, and we have no personal issue with anyone that is practicing anything. We have Muslims that are committing major sins, problems, disasters, and then we say we still interact with them. They are our brothers and sisters, and we have regulations and rules of how to deal with each other, especially in a very organized country like Australia. But again, the question is more about the minority of Muslims that are living here. Because I will tell you an example. I had a Muslim girl that is playing soccer, and another one that is playing footy, and she was asked, and we have, of course, that case, Sheikh Muzammil, with the PSG soccer club, when that player refused to play the game. And the French government is starting a big investigation. He's a discriminative person. They sent to his Idrissa Gueye, He's a Senegalese player that is playing for PSG. Just for not participating in the game. A Muslim girl that is wearing hijab that doesn't want to participate in the game, but she doesn't want to go home. And she was told, you either play the game or you go home. You cannot even stay on the bench with your friends. That's how dangerous it can be. That's when I apply for a job later on, and you tell me, would you participate in something like that? And I say, maybe for my religious values, I would be exempt from that. Can I ask for that? Elections. We have elections according to the law. For religious reasons, you cannot participate, and you pay a fine. So for major issues that is even establishing the democratic system in Australia, you can be exempt. Yeah. But when you have something out of choice, not out of disrespect, not out of discrimination, not out of mistreating them, now you say, for some religious values, I would step back and I would just not participate. No. Media would write about you. You're a discriminating person. No, how come? This is not inclusiveness. I did not ask the female players to put the hijab on when they play soccer, to be inclusive. Sheikh Muzammil, if I go to some teams that are not for non-Muslim players that are not wearing hijab, I can say, can you show that you are inclusive to Muslims and you put hijabs on? That doesn't make sense. So everybody's free, and we would like to have that freedom as well, not discrimination. We would never discriminate. Islam, as I said, with all minorities, with all groups, with all practices, have been the most inclusive religion for all people. But again, we would like to have that right that is creating harmony again. And if we do not have that freedom, unfortunately, people will leave. People will not call Australia home. They say, no, Australia is not my home, even though they're born and raised here. No, we need them to call Australia home. But when would they call Australia home? When they belong, when they feel that they are, respected in their values and their religion. Yeah.
Does he have any last questions before we start wrapping things up?
Yeah.
And before we get cancelled as well. Sheikh Alaa, now the way we end the podcast is we ask... Don't kill me, Rizal, I'm sorry. The way we end the podcast is we ask 10 out of interest questions. Okay. It's pretty much rapid fire questions.
Right. I really love the name.
You like it?
Yes. Out of interest because it has different understanding.
Yes, exactly.
Out of interest for finance, out of interest, knowing what
and whatnot. Yeah.
Very, very good name.
Very good name. I think a lot of people have said that.
Yes.
We're very proud of it. Yeah. And the person that came up with the name no longer works with us, unfortunately. But look, it's rapid fire questions. Then you could take as long or as slow as you want to answer. It's completely up to you. Depends how fast you want to go to ICV.
Right.
First question: your favorite Muslim scholar of today?
Yasir Qadi.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Favorite Sahaba and why?
Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhu, and why? Because he was so firm with the truth and the right thing, and he was not trying to make people happy as much as he cared about saying the truth as it is.
Yeah. We are lacking that these days. Your favorite hadith?
None of you would truly believe until you love for others while you love yourself.
It's beautiful. What do you think is the key to living a good life?
The key to live a good life is to abide by values, and the greatest values of the religions is what makes people happy through the path of Allah, and values is something that makes people really happy. Yeah.
Your favorite mosque?
My favorite mosque is the Masjid al-Nabawi, the Prophet's mosque, because I felt like so much different there. Yeah. And remembering what the Prophet went through, and we ended up being in front of his, mosque and grave. It's a long journey. Yeah.
What is your favorite food?
Kebab. Turkish kebab. Adana.
Adana. Right, from Katak.
Yes. Yeah, Adana. Yes.
Do you prefer your wife's cooking or your mum's?
Both.
No, you gotta pick one. It's an easy way out.
I would say my wife, because my mum is not going to get upset.
She's not going to watch this. I don't doubt it. What is your deepest fear?
Deepest fear is when I feel that I cannot fit in.
Okay.
Yeah.
What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I advise a 18-year-old self is just to look at my parents' advice to me back then in a positive way.
That's actually a good one.
Yeah.
Not
I
gonna
think
lie,
we should all do
that's
that.
a good
Yeah.
one. I should
Yeah.
be doing.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
If you could ask the Prophet, peace be upon him, any question,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be?
It would be how, and I saw that from some people, and the answer is not in words, in actions. When you see the majority are doing against what the morals and manners should be, would you still go with the majority to not be a troublemaker, or would you still abide by your manners and how to deal with that? Because that's very challenging. I will take that back to the point that you've mentioned, which is about some imams and some scholars. Not only imams and scholars, so many people in many different areas of work. They either take it as a message or they take it as a job. So if you take it as a job, so whoever is paying more, you just go with them. But if you take it as a message, you will abide by the principles of the message that you have. And I know some people in my area of work, whether it is the imam job or the counseling job or the community work, that would not be really abiding by the ethics and the morals of the job or the message, to be more accurate. And they take it just as a job. And then sometimes they would be seen as, the good ones, and the other ones that would not take it as a job as the troublemakers. So I'm more than happy to be called as a troublemaker if I still stick to my ethics and morals and manners of my message, not the job. Yeah.
It's a very strong way to end the podcast.
Yeah.
Sheikh Alaa, look, thank you so much for coming.
May Allah bless you.
I know it's late. It's like, what's the time? 7 o'clock.
I enjoyed this talk.
It's been an
I
absolute
enjoyed it.
pleasure. And I was actually
Wallahi.
looking forward to you coming. I'm like,
Wallahi, yani, to be honest with you, this is one of the best podcasts that I've ever done because the nature of questions Sheikh Muzammil has. That's the positive thing when you have a scholar asking the questions and a professional troublemaker person like me.
Professional troublemaker. That's a good tagline.
So thank you so much, and I'm so proud of Hijaz, and I really wish you all the best.
thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Archie.
Sheikh Alaa. It's been a
Inshallah.
Always a
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.